All right, guys, here's a question for you. Have you ever gotten into a situation where your mind just won't let it go? It could be a situation from the past, maybe something you're dealing with right now, or maybe you're even thinking about a situation that may or will happen. And your mind just goes into this spiral. You start future tripping, you start just processing this situation over and over and over again. And every time that loop starts over, your heart starts beating faster, your breath starts getting more rapid, you get tension all over your body, and you start becoming irritable and discontent. Well, my friends, you might be experiencing situational anxiety. And in today's episode, we're going to learn about what situational anxiety is and how to deal with it so we can snap ourselves back into the present and get on the right track. What's up, guys? And welcome to the Men's Empowerment Network podcast. And I am Joshua, your host. So I have been experiencing situational anxiety for actually this entire weekend. And, a lot of changes are coming up in my life that, could potentially be really, really great for me. And one of those is I was offered a full-time position in a purchasing role, which follows my background. It follows what I have experience in. And I received the offer letter, and it's they're offering more money than I have ever made in my entire life. you know Things are looking up, things are moving in a positive direction, things are looking bright and sunny. However, I've got a couple of skeletons in my closet that, if they run a background check, will come to surface. And it's something that I'm going to have to deal with. And so the entire weekend, I have been future tripping. I've been in a thought process loop about how I'm going to handle this situation, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say. I start, playing out different scenarios. I start having different conversations between me and HR, and it's just been a nonstop over and over and over and over, grind in my head. And it's been causing me nothing but stress, nothing but anxiety, and nothing but tension for the entire weekend. And, a lot of guys come into this with different situations in their life, whether it be financial, whether it be in their relationships, whether it be in spirituality, whether it be in health. You get some, seemingly bad news from the doctor, and all of a sudden you start future tripping. What's your future going to look like? How are things going to play out? You start having conversations in your head with other people about different scenarios and how things are going to roll, and all of this, and we just get up into this crazy mind spiral that just is seemingly endless, and eventually we just drive ourselves crazy, like I've been doing this entire weekend. Well, I had to go through a process in order to start relieving some of that tension, relieving some of that stress, taking away some of the anxiety, and calming myself down. And believe me, it has certainly been a process. But let's backtrack a little bit. Let's take a step back and really understand where this anxiety comes from. So in my case, it is, an unknowing of what is going to happen in the future, and we all understand that future circumstances are unpredictable. I have absolutely no idea what is going to happen when I walk into the office Monday morning. Are they going to run a background check? Are they not going to run a background check? Should I say something if they don't, say anything about a background check, just to kind of preemptively strike, just in case, I'm 3 weeks down the road and all of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah, we forgot about a background check. Let's run it now. And then, HR comes into my office and they're like, what the hell is going on here? And, things like that. So that unpredictability of the future, not knowing exactly what is going to happen is, a very strong cause of where that anxiety comes from. And, we run into this every single day of our lives. None of us can predict the outcome of any sort of situation or circumstance. And so naturally, the body is going to release those hormones that kind of cause stress. And just dependent upon the situation, more or less of those hormones are going to be released, causing more or less stress. And, Friday, after I'd gotten, that offer letter and, was over the moon, I immediately started thinking about, oh shit, what happens now? And so, Friday evening, I was tripping balls. I was like going crazy in my head. Those hormones were being flooded into my body because I had no idea what was going to happen. And so, narrowing that down, fear of the unknown, and then narrowing it down into, subsets of that. What am I actually afraid of? I'm actually afraid of being rejected. That fear of rejection is very real in all of us, and that fear of judgment. Okay, so they ran a background check, they found those skeletons. How are they going to perceive me? Are they going to be like, fuck you, you're out of here, you're fired, get out? Or are they going to allow me to, at least explain myself, state my position, state my case, and allow me to represent myself in, somewhat better light? All of this is future tripping. All of this, we're going around and around and around. What if they reject me? What if they throw my ass out onto the curb? What if, and playing those scenarios over and over in our heads just releases more and more of that cortisol and that adrenaline, which are the stress hormones. And so as we play those scenarios in our head, we start building it up and building it up and building it up and building it up until it's this mammoth mountain that, we can hardly wrap our heads around. And that is exactly where I was Friday evening and even into Saturday morning. As soon as I got up, I tried to take steps to calm my ass down, calm my nerves, calm that stress, relieve some of that tension. And it just wasn't working. I just could not step out of my head. And so, I did my prayers, I did my meditation, and that helped a little bit. That helped for about 30 seconds before I jumped right back into my thought processes. And, just understanding that, holy shit, none of this is in my control. And that in itself makes me anxious. I don't like when circumstances are not within my control. I don't like when I'm not able to take charge of a situation and push forth an outcome. Not knowing, not being able to develop the outcome of this situation. It's out of my control, causes stress and anxiety. And then deep down, as I start building these things up in my head, I start wondering, am I even worthy of, such a great opportunity? That's pretty deep. When I got to that point, I'm like, oh shit, why would they even want me in the first place? And then I start building these scenarios up in my head that maybe I deserve, to be, just kind of cast aside. Maybe I deserve to be rejected. Maybe I deserve to be judged. And that really hits an emotional root down inside. These are the insecurities, the feelings of unworthiness, the lack of self-esteem that reside way down deep inside. But I wasn't able to get there until I was able to process and go through the steps of where the anxiety is coming from. So at the very surface, it's, losing this job, losing this opportunity. And then I had to take it down a step deeper. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper. Where is that anxiety coming from? Well, ultimately, the fear of being rejected and the fear of being judged. Okay, so why do I have anxiety about that? Dig a little deeper. And then I get to the root of the issue, which is those feelings of unworthiness. Wow. And that was kind of a mind opener for me. When I went through that process, when I stepped back and really analyzed the situation, analyzed what was going on inside, analyzed what was really going on in my head, and dug down deep. So if you're in a situation, whether it be financial, whether it be relationships, spirituality, or health, if you start at that surface level anxiety, that situational anxiety, the circumstances that are presented in your head right now at this moment, and then dig deep a little bit further, dig down deeper. Where is the underlying issues coming from? And then once you have your head wrapped around those, go even further. Where does it lie on that emotional level? Are you feeling a sense of unworthiness? Are you feeling, that you're just unworthy of whatever situation is happening? Let's say you're proposing to your fiance, or you're proposing to your partner, and you start building up all of these scenarios in your head. What if he or she says no? Shit. What if he or she says yes? And then you dig down deep. Okay, so what's the next level? Why is this anxiety kind of plaguing my mind? Why am I future tripping? Why am I on this thought loop of you know analyzing different scenarios and conversations and how things are going to go and how things should play out and how I want things to play out, and what if they don't play out this way, and it just goes on and on and on and on until you're in a spiral. And so understanding that initial anxiety and then taking it a level deeper. Okay, so what am I really afraid of? What am I really afraid of? Am I afraid of rejection? If he or she says no, what if he or she says no? I'm going to feel really rejected. I'm going to feel really, cast aside. What if he or she says yes? Oh shit. Now what do I do? Now I have a fear of, am I of worthiness? Am I really, really worthy of this person? Am I good enough to actually be partnered with this person for the rest of my life? Shit, am I ready to be partnered with someone for the rest of my life? Am I ready to be tied down? Am I ready to be, kind of, in this situation where I'm going to be with one person for the rest of my life? I'm telling you, I've had to go through that myself. I've been proposed to. I have proposed to people, more than once. And, when it came down to actually making that commitment, these are the processes that I had to go through. Is this the person that I could see myself with for the rest of my life? And then I had to analyze and really dig down deep into the emotional factors of, am I good enough for this person? And, am I worthy of being blessed with a partnership that will last, hopefully, the rest of my life? And so, really understanding where those fears are coming from, because anxiety stems from the fear, and then the fear stems from that emotional value that you are placing on it. So that's where the anxiety is coming from on an emotional level. It starts with an emotion and then it builds up into a fear and then it builds up into an anxiety and a thought pattern that goes on a seemingly endless loop. But what is happening in the body? What's happening in the physical body that when, a thought of either scarcity or a thought of some sort of stressful situation pops in your head, what happens? You've got this little thing in your brain called your amygdala, and this is the part of the brain that really processes those emotions. So it starts with an emotion, and then your amygdala kind of lights up, and it starts processing what that emotion means. And then once it has determined what that emotion means, it shoots over a signal to your hypothalamus. And your hypothalamus is kind of the control center of your brain. Now, if that emotion is perceived as being a threat, and a lot of people determine a threat as if, an 800-pound grizzly bear is charging at you. That's a threat. But that's not necessarily true. A threat can certainly affect something much seemingly smaller than, a big old grizzly bear charging at you. It could be a threat to your financial circumstances, your financial security, a threat to your personal well-being, a threat to your emotional well-being, a threat to your relationships, a threat to your health. Someone who has just been told that they have terminal cancer is going to have a similar brain activity as an 800-pound grizzly bear charging at you. It's a perceived threat. And so your amygdala shoots over this threat signal to your hypothalamus. And then your hypothalamus, which is up in here, up in your brain, control center of the brain, lights up. And then it goes into action by shooting, signals down through your autonomic through your autonomic nerve system. And that, shoots through your body. Okay. So your hypothalamus shoots through your autonomic nervous system, which is composed of two parts. You've got your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system is your gas. That's what's going to get you going. That's going to shoot through and release some stress hormones and, get you charged up and ready to go. And then your parasympathetic nervous system is what is kind of your brake system. It calms you down. It tells you to take a hold, take a step back, chill the fuck out, and calm down. But in stressful situations, your autonomic nervous system activates your sympathetic nervous system, which shoots, signals down to your adrenal glands, which are attached to each one of your kidneys. This is something I didn't know. I actually had to research some of this. Shoots down to the adrenal glands, which are attached to your kidneys, and those release the stress hormones of cortisol and adrenaline. And that's when, your whole system starts activating, your whole fight or flight, system really lights up. You know, Unnecessary bodily functions are cut off or reduced. Circulation really pumps up through the midsection of the body. The digestive system slows down, your heart rate increases, your breath starts increasing. You build up some tension because you are ready to roll. You are ready to roll now. And, whatever the perceived threat is, that system is activated. And so if you understand what is happening, not only in the mind, but in the body, then you are able to more quickly identify it, especially if you get in that thought loop, that future tripping, that mindless circumstance and situation just won't leave your head scenario. You're able to identify what is happening in your mind and in your body and take a step back and consciously activate your parasympathetic nervous system so that you can take a step back, calm down, and rationalize through things. And, I had to go through this past weekend. So a lot of people think that cortisol, adrenaline, those stress hormones are bad. Well, that's not really the case. I mean, they're in small quantities. They're good for you. They actually, in small quantities, help your immune system. They help cognitive functioning. If you are in that fight or flight mode, you will notice that your perception and your cognitive reasoning is much, much quicker. So think about when you're driving and all of a sudden you see a car jet out in front of you. What's your initial reaction? You slam on the brakes without even thinking about it. That's how quickly the body works. It's miraculous. Without even thinking about it, automatic, boom, on the brake. And only after you've done that and a split second later, do you start processing exactly what happened. Crazy. It's insane how the body and the mind work. It's mind-boggling. But cortisol, adrenaline, those stress hormones are actually really good in small doses. And, when we face adversity, when we face tension and stressful situations in minor doses, we start building up resiliency. We're able to handle, these stresses and these circumstances that come up because we've gone through it before. So we become more and more resilient. However, long periods of stress have dramatic and traumatic effects, not only on the mind, but on the body. And humans were not designed for long periods of stress. In fact, it can be fatal if, the stress isn't managed. It can lead to prolonged anxiety, depression, digestive issues. Now, I don't know about you, but I know whenever I start getting tense and stressed out, my stomach starts feeling like it's being twisted into knots. And I mean, to be quite frank, I don't really poop very well when I'm stressed out. If I've got prolonged periods of stress, I notice that my digestion is not, working right. It's not functioning properly. And it makes perfect sense because, it's pulling blood from the digestive system so that it can focus and concentrate on delivering more oxygen to vital organs fit for responding to stressful situations. And, the pizza that you eat isn't really priority when you're faced with imminent danger. or, some sort of stressful situation. That's just not top priority. Okay. It also, long periods of stress result in muscle tension, joint pains, muscle aches, heart disease, heart attacks, stroke, high blood pressure, heart arrhythmia, all sorts of medical issues, sleeping problems, weight gain. This is especially true. So, when you are in periods of prolonged stress, your body is not consuming the fat cells. In fact, it's actually preserving all of that, those nutrients and food that you intake, and it actually makes you fatter. And so, if you're having a little struggle around the waistline, you might try relaxing a little and seeing if, suddenly you notice yourself start shrinking down just a little bit. It also affects memory and, of course, focus. If you're so stressed out all the time, how can you be focused on anything? And I know when I go through those periods of cycles where, I'm future tripping and it lasts a prolonged period of time, I'm not focused on anything else, not anything. And, and then I start, getting stressed out because I'm stressed out. How fucked up is that? You know, I start getting stressed out that I'm stressed out, and that too in itself becomes a mind trip. It becomes a cycle. It becomes, like this vengeance just looming over me. It's crazy. And so, what are we going to do? If you start noticing that you get in that head spin, if you start future tripping, if you start getting into that situational anxiety, what are things that you can do to, calm yourself down, take a step back, and start processing things rationally? And I had to really direct myself in through this process over the past weekend. And I had it, and it wasn't easy. Let me tell you, it was not easy. I legitimately had to take it step by step so that I could finally get to a point where I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So I really had to dig deep into what the real issue was. And I explained a little bit about this earlier in the podcast, where that real anxiety, where that real stress was coming from. And, it started with the surface level problem. You know, this background check. It's a looming cloud that is over my head. And, it's a result of choices I made while drinking. And, these issues have not gone away. And, they are not going to go away in the foreseeable future. And so it's something that I have to own up to. It's something that I have to deal with. And, you know, on a side note, as I was going through this process, as I was going through these situations, I started out, going into denial mode. It was going into denial. If I go into the office and, they've already pulled my background or whatever, and they are like, da, 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 deny, 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 even though, that's ridiculous because it's right there on paper. There's no denying it. And so then I wanted to kind of manipulate the situation so that I could make it play out into my favor, or at least in my head. If I manipulate the situation this way, then it should play out this way. And da, 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 da. All that did was cause me more stress and more anxiety because I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being true to who I want to be as a person. I wasn't being honest. And those are commitments that I made to myself, many months ago, that every single day I would do everything in my power to become a better man today than I was yesterday. And so that thought process was not in alignment with who I am today. And so it was causing me more stress and more anxiety. So once I took those negative thoughts, those manipulative thoughts, those thoughts about wanting to work the system out and made them irrational and illogical, then I could start focusing on, what I needed to do as a true, honest, and, man, owning up to, the wrongs that I did, owning up to, the consequences that I will ultimately have to face, owning up to, the things that being honest, for God's sake. And so once I was able to shift my mindset, shift my focus into doing the right thing, things started becoming a little easier, just a little bit. I was still up in my head about how I would go about this situation, what conversations I would have. Should I approach this situation first? Should I wait till it's presented? All of these different things. But with the platform of being honest, regardless of what happens, then I was able to start calming my mind down just a little bit. So there's the surface level, and then digging a little deeper. Okay, so what am I really afraid of? What am I really afraid of? Well, I have this great opportunity ahead of me, and I'm afraid that if they find this stuff out, then I'm going to get rejected. And that's a hard thing to come to terms with. You know, the possibility that even though I'm going to be open and honest, that I could still get rejected as a consequence of my actions, as a consequence of, the bad choices that I've made in the past, I could still get rejected. Okay. So there's one level deeper. So what's under that? Feeling of unworthiness. Maybe I'm not worthy of being given a second chance in their eyes. Maybe I'm not worthy of, this great opportunity. Maybe I'm not worthy of, financial security. Maybe I'm not worthy of taking that leadership role. Okay. All right. So I've gotten down to the emotional root of the situation. Then I can deal with that part of it. I can start building myself up, helping myself understand that, you know what, I have come a long way in 9 months when I quit drinking. I've come a long way physically. I've come a long way mentally. I've come a long way spiritually. I today can honestly say I am a better man than I was 9 months ago. And I can take pride in that. I can, be thankful for that. I can be grateful for that. And, that in itself is worthiness. And so, I'm working on getting that emotional issue elevated so that then I can deal with the actual surface level problem. And then I start questioning myself. I start asking myself questions to start calming down my mind. And I ask myself, what is the worst case scenario here? What is the worst thing that could possibly happen? So let's walk through this. So I go into work Monday morning. I walk in the office. I sit down in HR. I hand over my paperwork. She does the drug screen. The HR lady does the drug screen, and then says, "All right, I'm going to run a background check." Those situations come up, and they fire me. They're like, "Sorry, you seem like a great guy, but we're not having, someone with a criminal record, someone who is pending charges, uh, work for us. So sorry, it was nice to know you. Goodbye." So should that happen, am I going to be financially worse off than I am right now? No, I'm not. I still have, a side gig that I've been working on and have been working on for a couple of months. And I'm not going to be financially worse off than I am. Is my pride going to be hurt? Yeah. Is my ego going to be hurt? Yeah. Yeah, it definitely will. Most definitely. Um, but that is the worst case scenario that is going to happen. So when I analyze it rationally, what is the worst case scenario? It doesn't really turn out that bad. So let's take the example of, you are thinking about proposing to your partner and you start future tripping, you start, going on this thought loop, you start getting into situational anxiety about what's going to happen, what, blah, 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 blah. Ask yourself, take a step back, take a deep breath. What is the worst thing that could possibly happen? So you get down on one knee, you pull out that diamond ring, you ask your loved one to marry you, and then he or she looks down at you and they're like, oof, oof, this probably isn't a good time to tell you, but I've been cheating on you for the past 6 months with your brother, and we're actually going to get married. Oof. Oh, devastation. Not only against, your ex partner, but now your brother. Holy shit. Your world just crashed down around you. But what's the worst thing? Are you dead? No. Heartbroken? Yeah, for sure. Mentally distraught? Yeah, 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 that's going to happen. But are you able to move forward physically, emotionally, mentally? Will you be able to move forward at some point? Yeah, yeah. So the worst thing that happened was that a cheater just exited out of your life. And a good for nothing brother just proved he's more of a dick. So that's the worst thing. Really, I mean, that's logically the worst thing. So what if you flip that? What if you flip that? Let's move over into a positive mindset. Okay, so we've gone through what the worst possible scenario could be. For me, I'm kicked out on my ass and I no longer have a job that is would financially change my life. Okay. So what's the best thing that could happen? Well, if they fire me, the best thing that could happen is I get to focus more on delivering content. I get to focus more on, the physical workouts that, I'm trying to implement more of in my life. I get to focus on, really building up a men's empowerment network, and these are ideas and things that I've been kind of tossing around, but never really focused on. But if they fire me, maybe that would be a sign that maybe I should focus more on building up the things that I enjoy doing. Interesting. Or another best case scenario, they appreciate my honesty. They have more trust in me and they let me move forward and, take this department by the horns and fucking blow it out of the water. That would be awesome. That'd be so awesome to be able to prove to them that, just because I have a shady past doesn't mean I'm a bad person, but I can still step into this department, take control over it, and fucking rock it. That could happen. Sounds pretty cool to me. Either way, I won't have the financial security right off the bat if, I'm focusing on my personal things, but maybe that's for the best. Maybe that is the best case scenario. Thing is, I don't know. I don't know. And that's okay. So, are you going to be worse off than you are right now? Ask yourself. If this thing doesn't work out, if it doesn't go as I plan, is it really going to be worse off for me? Ask yourself. Really take a hard look at that. Take a step back out of the situation and look at it from an objective perspective. Are you going to be worse off? Really? And be honest. Be honest with yourself. And also ask yourself, I'm wasting all of this time up in my head about the situation, about how things are going to go, about what's going to be said, about what actions are going to be taken, about what circumstances are going to evolve from this one. Can I really control any of it? Is any of it in my control? In my case, the answer is no. I can go, I can be honest, I can take responsibility, I can be a gentleman, I can be professional, I can control my demeanor, I can control my emotions, I can control my actions. But ultimately, how things play out, I have no control over. None. Absolutely none. And there is a peace in understanding that. There is a peace and serenity in knowing I can go forth, I can put my best foot forward, I can be a better man, and then I can let it go. Because I can't control it. I cannot control the outcome of this circumstance. And then understanding, and I don't know what your spiritual beliefs are. Mine revolve a lot around energy, around universe, around things like that. I've for the past 10 years, I've done deep dives into energetic connections, and that's just my thing. If you're more of a God on high type dude, cool, awesome. Whatever that higher power is for you, whatever that spiritual connection is for you, whether it's the universe or God or Buddha or Allah or whatever. I don't know about you, But I like to believe that they're always conspiring in my favor. And no matter what the outcome, I have allowed myself to believe that everything happens in my favor. And it's really funny that when I look back at it on my life, every single situation, whether it be perceived as being good or bad, has ultimately allowed me to grow, has ultimately allowed to, for my benefit, and has allowed me to reach this point in my life. And that in itself is pretty miraculous. That in itself is amazing. You know, I, I was thinking the other day, I was sitting outside on the back porch. I'm like, and it's funny how um this whole job situation, came about because with this side gig, I'm doing AI, I'm training AI chatbots, and it's an independent contractor gig. And so it's very up in the air. It could end at any minute. Well, I get an email stating that they were going to cut our pay, and they cut my pay by 20%. I mean, that was a big number. And I was already kind of financially like, oh crap. But they cut my pay by 20%. That exact day, I got a call from this recruiter about this job. And so the universe has a funny way, or God, or Allah, or Buddha, or whoever, whatever, has a funny way of working out. It's insane. It's insane. Crazy. And that's how my life has rolled. You know, a perceived bad thing happens, and then all of a sudden, something kind of evens it out. There's a great episode on Seinfeld from years and years ago about Even Steven. And, the whole episode was about how Jerry, if something would happen that was perceived as being negative, relatively quickly, something good happened to balance it out. And that's kind of how my life goes when I let it. When I take a step back, relinquish some control over the outcome, and have faith. It's pretty incredible the way it happens. And a lot of times I don't even notice it, which is a shame. And that's something I need to work on. I need to work on when, those idiosyncrasies just kind of work out. And, I noticed it really prevalently with this whole job thing. I lose 20% of my pay. All of a sudden, I get called by a recruiter for some insanely awesome opportunity. Crazy. So, stepping outside of yourself, stepping outside of the situation, because you cannot see anything logically, anything rationally while you're in the midst of this chaotic mind fuck, this situational anxiety just kind of flying all around you. So go through the process, start digging down deep into where the emotional aspect lies, and then take a step back. Take a step back and analyze this situation. You've all heard the phrase, you can't see the forest through the trees. That's what that means. You're in the midst of the situation, you're in the midst of the chaos, and you can't really see any sort of logical, any sort of rational outcome because you're caught up in emotion, you're caught up in your hormones, you're caught up in the stress and anxiety, and things are just barrowing down on you. So it's time to dig deep, take a step back, take a breather, and, do something. Take a logical perspective of the situation. The worst thing that you could possibly do is sit there and stew on it. That is the worst thing. And that is so habitual of us. We believe that we can think our way out of wrong thinking. That's not how it works. We've got to take a step back, get logical, and get into something else. Now, for me, I had to get into the gym. And, I tell you what, yesterday I got into the gym. I forced myself into the gym because I really wanted to sit there and stew and analyze about every little possible outcome that could possibly happen in the entire infinity of the universe. What could happen? That's what I wanted to do. But I knew that that would just cause more stress, more anxiety, and there was literally nothing I could do about it in that moment. And so I had to take a step out. I had to go and get physical. And for me, I jumped on that elliptical machine and I pounded it hard for an entire hour. Man, I just let loose. I put on the tunes. I just jammed that motherfucker. And I was going crazy. I was letting all that cortisol go. I was letting all that adrenaline go. And then all of a sudden, those endorphins started kicking in. That serotonin started kicking in. And it started counterbalancing all of those stress hormones and started flushing those out. And I tell you what, after I got done with that workout, I felt 100 times better. Doesn't mean the problem went away. Doesn't mean that I didn't stop thinking about it, but I wasn't obsessing about it. I wasn't playing that loop, that the situation would pop up in my head and be like, okay, take a step back. Nothing I can do about it now. The universe has my best interest in mind. The worst case scenario is I get to do my own shit. Okay, cool. I'm okay. So really getting out, doing something either physical, creative, or something you enjoy that gets you out of your head and into something you can either focus on, something positive, or something you can do physically. Get out of that situation. Meditation. Now, I know, I know when your head starts spinning, it is nearly impossible to sit there and meditate. So, I would highly encourage you to start out with either doing the physical or the enjoyable thing. Pull yourself out, allow some of that serotonin, some of that, those positive hormones to get released to counterbalance the cortisol and the adrenaline before you jump into, a meditative practice. That way you're going into meditation with a calmer mind. And then again, another way to step out of yourself, volunteering, getting out there, helping other people really has a dramatic way of pulling you out of yourself and putting yourself into a position where you can connect and where you can be of service to others. It's miraculous. It's really mind-boggling how the act of being of service to someone else can make you more humble and make you forget about the problems that you're going through right now. And then talking it out. Now, I know I'm right there with you. Talking it out is probably the last thing I want to do. I'm not a talker. When emotional things are going on, when I've got head spinning shit going on, my last uh, resort is actually going and talking to someone about it. But when I did, and I've talked to my group about it. I've talked to another dude about it, about what's going on. Somehow, pulling those thoughts out of my head and projecting them, practically vomiting them out of my mouth, immediately takes away some of the stress. And not only does it take away some of the stress, then you're offering someone else the opportunity to provide an objective view of the situation. Remember, you're caught there in the forest. You can't see it through the trees. Your head's spinning, blah, 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 blah. You're not rationally thinking. You're not logically thinking. Actually, word vomiting it. Yeah, maybe in a more manly fashion than vomiting all over someone. But just talking it out with another dude, allowing them to offer you an objective opinion, a different perspective, or even just to listen. As you get this shit out of your head, then you're able to calm your nerves. You're able to take a step back and actually look at things from a rational perspective. And, I had to go through every single one of these steps because I just could not get out of my head. It's crazy, this trap that we get in. It's insane. But as men, we have the ability to humble ourselves, to understand that we do not have all of the answers for every single issue that comes up in our lives. And sometimes we just need to take a step back, take a breather, talk to someone, and let the universe do what it may. So, wow. Just talking about this situation now has calmed my nerves even more. And so I'm not going to say I'm not going to stress about it, especially when tomorrow morning rolls around and I've got to walk into the office. But I know that I'm in a better place. I'm in a more logical, a more rational place. I'm not acting or thinking out of emotion. And I can walk into that office with my head held high and take on the situation like a man. An honest, trustworthy, honorable man. And I can take pride in that. And you know what that does? It'll help boost up that emotional feeling of being worthy. It all comes to play. It all comes to play, my friends. All right, my friends, go forth and, count your blessings, live in gratitude, and remember to just take it easy, dude. Take it easy. Life isn't that dramatic. Life is not that dramatic. We have a tendency to build all this shit up in our heads and, think that just because we think it, it's true. Not really the case. So, my friends, I sincerely appreciate you for listening. If you got value out of this podcast, I would encourage you to subscribe, share this podcast, share it on all your socials. If you know someone who is constantly in that state of a thought loop or future tripping or situational anxiety, share this with them. Help a brother out. Jesus, get it out there. That's what we're here for. We're here to help each other out. And just for shits and giggles, I am currently in the midst of a May challenge, and this challenge is dedicated to making you more disciplined and more intentional about actions in your financial, your relationships, your spiritual, and health elements of your life. So, if you're up for a challenge, if you like challenge to jumpstart a process of moving in a direction where you want to go, click on the link in the show notes, sign up. I know we're already into May, but who the fuck cares? Jump in, have fun. We got a Facebook group lined up, and let's build a community of guys helping each other move forward. Until next time, my friends, cheers.